What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Run Pure Sports NBA Hardwood Show and NFL Showdown Show. I'm your host, Mangone. We got tons of news flying here on a Saturday. We got really bad football being played in that Rams-Seattle game. We'll start it off with you first, DC. How's it going over there, man?
Going good. Pretty good start to these football games. A lot of Cam Akers, some Stephon Diggs, all in on Josh Allen. So those things are all good. And excited to talk some basketball, although I will say a lot of news we're still waiting on. It seems like, especially on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, some of this news comes in even later than normal. So, breaking down these NBA games can be tough with all this critical news missing. But we'll do our best. We just got a huge piece of news, Bradley Beal missing along with Russell Westbrook. So that Washington-Miami game to start the slate, I think, is going to be a critical one.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be a really critical piece of this slate now. And also, do you load up on this value? Will that hurt you for trying to play some of these other values later on in Milwaukee? We'll obviously dive into that and talk about it here. I'm going to go over to you, Bobby. How's it going over there? You broke the news to us on Bradley Beal. So does that change your thoughts on the slate, and how do you handle everything?
Yeah, just broke the news after I seen it on Fantasy Labs, broke it in Discord while I was on the show. So, just multitasking. But, yeah, I think it gives you value to guys like Ish Smith. Basically, Rui is obviously already a good play. Bertans, those guys get bumped up. But we need to sort this out, because this is kind of a situation where we're getting a ton of news. You have Giannis late. He's questionable. We're still kind of working through our core plays and stuff, so just have some patience, and we'll try to get them up as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I'm updating the cash chart. I'm doing both of them, by the way. So if you're here watching the show and you're looking at that, I'm doing my best to make the adjustments. And if there's a couple guys without the salaries, don't hurt on me too much about it, because it's a lot to juggle right now, and we got to figure this all out. We are going to go game by game right now and kind of break down this entire slate. I know Draftcheat's a tournament, guys. So is Bobby. I'll be talking about some of the cash stuff, and we'll talk about all the news and break it down for you guys. Before we do that, though, please hit that like, hit that subscribe on the video. It helps us out a ton. We would really, really appreciate it. But let's dive in. Oh, Giannis ruled out. So we just got some more news here. That's good that we got it now rather than later, too, so we can at least kind of digest everything with the slate. Draftcheat, how does that change things for you with Giannis being ruled out?
I mean, now we have Westbrook, Beal, and Giannis all out of the slate. It's possibly turning into a slate where you can leave money on the table, which I think is always kind of a viable strategy for small NFL slates like we saw today. It's a viable strategy for baseball, usually not for basketball, right? Like, usually pricing is pretty dialed in for basketball, where you're kind of, you're scratching out 5, 6, 7x point per dollar. But when you get a smaller slate like this, you get all these stars gone from the equation, it really kind of opens up the slate. And it's almost frustrating, because all the research you did earlier at this point with all these guys out can kind of become moot to some extent. But I do think in general we benefit from the more moving parts, the better, right? Like, we're on top of the news. We can figure out who's going to benefit from all these players being out. So I do think it creates more work, but I think in the end it does create somewhat of an edge for us.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We just can't plug in Julius Randle tonight, right, Draftcheat? Not able to do that, not on this slate.
Unfortunate, man. He got in foul trouble yesterday, missed out on that 60 burger, but yeah, we'll be back on it. I think he's playing tomorrow and Monday, so we'll be back on that Julius Randle train for sure.
Yeah, we got this massive news here. Like I said, Bradley Beal being ruled out. We got Neto in there, Ish Smith. Now, it was shaken up where there was a lot of really good spend-up guards, and now we have this value plays that I think are like guys you have to go to. Like, between Real Neto and Ish Smith, like, who's your guy? Which one do you think is the best option, Draftcheat?
I think they're both in play now. I think you almost have to choose one or the other, or maybe play both. I did not anticipate Bradley Beal missing this game, right? That's moves that just came down. Like, I was planning on playing Bradley Beal, to be honest. One question for me, I'll have to kind of dig into the rotations a little bit while we're on air. Will Neto and Ish Smith ever see the floor together, right? I think that's kind of a key question for the slate. My guess is no, without looking at it. I think they're both kind of pure point guard types, and neither are great shooters. So if they're not going to see the floor together, maybe you've got to choose one or the other. I guess I would tend to go with the starter, but we've seen Ish Smith come off the bench plenty of times in his career and put up big games and kind of usurp the starter. I've been on like the DeAnthony Melton train these last couple of games when there's like a clear split between the starting point guard and the backup point guard where they're splitting all 48 point guard minutes and there's no clear delineation between the two guys in terms of skill and playing time. Sometimes the backup can come in and play the 30 minutes compared to 18, right, of the 48 total. So I think it's a key question, one that I don't know the answer to right now. Hopefully we'll by the time lock comes around.
Yeah, hopefully we will be able to get that answer. Bobby, I'll go over to you. How are you handling all this news that just hit with Beal, Westbrook? Like, is it Ish Smith? Is it Neto? Maybe it's Thomas Bryant, who has looked absolutely phenomenal for the Wizards. The matchup, it's not the most ideal, but I think that it's a pretty good spot here for Washington. Bam Adebayo is tough to obviously go up against Jimmy Butler and all those defensive guys, but do you like Thomas Bryant? Do you like Davis Bertans? What are you looking to do with the front court and guards?
Yeah, so basically just trying to figure out we also have news, right, with Towns, like, and that game's pretty highly totaled. Karl Anthony Towns is also questionable, so if he was to be ruled out, I think we'd get value as well. So I don't really mind backloading. I think that's kind of a way you could go, but just hitting on like the Washington news, Neto, Ish Smith obviously in play. Rui, Bertans, you hit on Bryant. I just want to pull up the usage differential when Westbrook and Beal are off the court.
There's so little data on those two, right? We've got like if you take Westbrook and Beal off the court, we've got like 22 minutes as a high. Yeah, it's rough.
Davis Bertans gets a big bump. Passanix gets a big bump, but the minutes are like there's no minutes. Like right. There's really nothing there. There's really no data. So. We're just going to have to try to sort through it. I think Troy Brown will see a bump. Neto definitely sees a bump. And maybe lean on Rui a little bit more. That would be kind of someone I'd be interested in. We were already pretty much on him anyways. Bertans gets a shot going. Bunch of different ways you can go. Mangone, what are you doing?
I mean, yeah, so this is a lot to juggle, obviously, and try and figure out. So it's the first game. So I think Troy Brown, we've seen in a really good usage role in the past when this situation has happened. This is last year, right? I don't know if it's going to replicate again, but 3.6 gallon, like a site like a FanDuel, I'm sure he's cheap on DraftKings as well. He's someone that I would look at and be a little interested in today. I think, what's his name? I forget, it's Denny. I don't know how to say it. Denny.
Avdija.
Yeah, Avdija. Like, he's looked good when he's played, right? Obviously the last couple of games have been a little rough, but when he's gotten the minutes, when he saw in like the 20s, he was putting up some pretty decent numbers. So he's a guy that could obviously, maybe soak up more usage than you would expect for a cheap price tag and could be interesting. There's a lot of guards that I want to spend up on this slate. Like I want to spend for Luka. I want to maybe look to Drew Holiday with Giannis being out. So I think he'd be a forward option that you can consider on this slate now. Draftcheat, what do you think about Thomas Bryant idea? I think he's definitely someone that's certainly in play. Obviously, these guards are really good options. Thomas Bryant is pricier, but Bam Adebayo defense is no joke. Is he a good option to pay up for in tournament?
I don't think so. Honestly, I'm worried about the Wizards here sitting Westbrook and Beal. It's just such a huge portion of their offense that I think it's hard. What I anticipate, I think it's going to be difficult for the Wizards to kind of like run a functional offense tonight when they're missing. I don't know what Beal and Westbrook probably account for 60+% of their shots, almost all of their playmaking, right? And you just take those two guys out and it's like, can these guys run the offense? I don't know. So Thomas Bryant's not really a guy that can create his own shot, right? He relies on the playmakers around him, getting him looks, obviously the offensive rebounding and all that stuff would still be a case, but I just don't see the Wizards being able to compete in this game against the Heat. I know the Heat have had their struggles this year, but they are healthy right now. We know what level of play they're capable of. I'm anticipating a blowout in this game, to be frank. So that doesn't mean you have to fade, Ish Smith and Raul Neto. And, I think Rui Hachimura, like Bobby mentioned, is a decent play, but I don't want to get too heavy on the Wizards here because they still have enough guys, right? This isn't a situation where they're down to like 8 or 9 guys like we sometimes see, especially in this COVID era. So I think I'll probably end up a little bit underweight on the Wizards in general. Outside of the point guards, Ish Smith and Raul Neto, I do like both those guys.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if it's a blowout, obviously you have to look at, maybe like a Jerome Robinson that he makes like a contrarian pivot off of a Neto or a Bryant. But that kind of wraps up that side of the ball. Do we have anything on the Heat that you guys want to talk about? Does this make them more interesting draft sheet with it being a blowout?
It could, but it's just who you're going to go to, right? It's kind of a balanced team where I was interested in Bam Adebayo coming into the slate. I still am. But it would seem like a game where perhaps Spoelstra and the Heat get these guys a little bit of rest. I'm going to try to have minimal exposure to this game. I can't say for sure where I'm going to end up, but I'm worried about the minutes on both sides of the ball here.
Bobby, how about you? Do you want to get any exposure to the Heat, or are you just kind of plugging in some Wizards value and moving on to the next game?
Yeah, prior to the situation, I didn't hate Bam. I thought he was going to be low-owned in tournaments, but I think I'm on the same kind of path as Draftcheat to where I just don't think that I think this game probably likely blows out, and we can just wait and backload. Obviously, you're going to end up playing one or two of these guys in cash from the Wizards, but just backloading, there's better totals. We can wait on that Giannis news. Could be pretty good going.
I think you got to almost choose one or two of the Wizards guys, right? It seems like just because they're all so cheap and there's so much usage to go around with Beal and Westbrook out that I don't think you can completely fade the Wizards, but I think some people will be inclined to try to jam in 3 or 4 Wizards. That's not the way I want to go.
I'd likely be getting, like, if you were like multi-entering, would you put like at least, like, you'd make a script at least 2 Wizards probably on most teams, maybe at least on DraftKings. FanDuel, maybe you don't have to, but I think DraftKings for sure, correct?
Yeah, minimum 1, and I think 2 on most teams. Yep.
All right. Listen, we talked about backloading and not wanting to play some games. This is one I don't know what to do with. I don't think it's a game we want to touch too much. It's the Suns. It's the Pacers. 216 total. Draftcheat, I'm going to go to you first. I think Sabonis has been an interesting tournament option, but maybe this isn't the right spot. Chris Paul on the opposite side could be a good run back, but how are you handling this game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in Sabonis, right? He's just so steady. The big problem with Sabonis is his ceiling doesn't seem to quite be there, right? I don't think he's ever really going to pop off for 70 fantasy points, but I'm not sure you need that on this slate. I think, the 45 to 55 that he gets you, it seems like, 80% of the time is basically where he ends up somewhere near that range. He's a good play. I mean, I do like targeting bigs against the Suns defense, although the Suns defense is short up certainly this year, but I still like it against DeAndre Ayton, who I think is a pretty poor defensive big. And the Pacers just run everything through Sabonis, right? Like, not that, obviously Oladipo and Brogdon and Turner can't have big games, but Sabonis is, if you look at the numbers, he is the kind of the key cog in their offense. He is the engine that makes them go. So whenever I at least can identify, it's a Julius Randle, Nikola Jokic, these big men who run things in the post, and that's Sabonis. I like targeting those guys because their floor is just so high because they're touching the ball on every possession, right? So many of the Pacers possessions, they basically start with the point guard bringing the ball up the floor. They throw it to Sabonis in the high post, and he facilitates or scores from there. So yeah, I'm in on Sabonis. Other plays from this game, I mean, I don't know if I've played a Phoenix Sun like all year long. They're just slowing down the pace. They're spreading it around. Have we seen many ceiling games at all from the Phoenix Suns? I mean, I feel like I've been fading them, and I haven't really regretted it ever. So I don't have a great feel for the Suns because I'm just never on them. So interested to hear if you guys have other takes on the Suns here.
Yeah, Bobby, how about you? How are you handling this game? Do you agree with what Draftcheat said? I thought he brought up a great point. And the other point I think you brought up is getting these high usage guys and getting against a guy like Ayton, right? Because Ayton is similar to a guy like Rudy Gobert. We saw Randall cook him up at one point. And you can get Ayton in foul trouble too. Like, Sabonis is able to do that with the amount of usage he sees in the post and really kind of just destroy that team a bit. So what are you thinking about that and handling this team in tournaments?
Yeah, so I think Sabonis is definitely someone you have to consider as maybe a pivot off a guy like Drummond, who's going to be pretty popular or was going to be pretty popular prior to basically all the news that we just got. minus 286 for a double-double Sabonis. Just someone to throw out there. He's at 9,100. It's 200 more than Drummond. I don't mind going to Sabonis. The issue for me with the Suns, like I think Sabonis would definitely be my favorite play in this game. On the Suns side, it gets kind of tough, right? Like Booker's going to have games where he plays well, but the usage is pretty much spread out between Paul, Booker, Ayton. So it's just kind of like it's not really a game that with the totals that we have, and if we leave ourselves like swap equity, like we have games after this. Spurs, Minnesota Timberwolves, 235 total. Portland Kings, 236.5. Like there's reasons not to play this game or have too much exposure to this game, but definitely if I had to pick someone, it would be Sabonis, just because Drummond's ownership's around like a 30% clip right now, and I think that's fadeable in tournaments.
I mean, Booker's just overpriced, right? Like,
yeah,
people are looking at what he's done the last couple of years, and a lot of that came when he was the point guard. Like, when Rubio would be out last year, they've just had kind of trash point guards throughout Booker's career in Phoenix. And so at times he's been the primary ball handler, the primary playmaker, and that's led to some giant Devin Booker games in the past. It's not the case with Chris Paul. I mean, I'm not a game log watcher, but if you look at Devin Booker's game, he hasn't scored more than 42.75 fantasy points this entire season. You can't pay $8K for that, right? Like, even if he has his best game of the year and scores 45 fantasy points, that might not even be enough at that price point. So, like I said, I haven't been playing Suns, and that's why. It's spread out right now between Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. They've got some good guys off the bench. I just don't see it with this team. And the Pacers, they are not a team I want to target, right? They've got their things dialed in. They've got one of the best defenses in the league. Everyone's been healthy all year long. I think the Pacers control this game with the pace, with Sabonis. So it's really just Sabonis or bust for me in this Phoenix Indiana game.
Yeah, and we just got
more news.
Yeah. What's the news, Bobby? Tell the people.
Yeah, so basically Colin Sexton's out. This is like we're not going to play on Sunday pretty much for the NBA. It feels like no one's really interested in playing, so we just have to sift through all this, and it's just more work for us. But bear with us, be patient. Yeah, this is about to get really tricky. Seti Osman definitely gets a bump in that situation. Larry Nance, Drummond. I guarantee Giannis sits at this point. Like, I just don't. We've seen similar situations. I think Giannis is just going to sit.
Yeah,
Dotson gets a boost as well. What'd you say, Draftcheat? Sorry.
Yeah, Giannis is ruled out already.
He's ruled out, yeah. So we just got that flurry, and that was obviously mixed in there. So, yeah, Middleton, Drew. I like this game more now, I feel like. I don't know. Sexton being ruled out. Dotson gets the bump. Like I said, I like Osman. Brook Lopez, I really like. I think he's another guy. If Drummond's still going to be a centerpiece, which could have changed by now, but I think he's someone that you go to. He's going to pull Drummond away from the basket. I think he's a good tournament pivot at his price. I think he's around 4.7. He's going to see a usage bump. There's going to be so many ways you can go in tournaments. Mangone, how are you kind of thinking about approaching it from a cash perspective?
I mean, all this news obviously is interesting. Like, so I don't want to overreact too much to the Sexton news. Like, I think it obviously helps some of these guys, like some of the more guys in the forward position. But like, I don't know if I want to jump Dotson in. Like, I think he's a good play. I still think he's a strong play. And there's just a lot of guards you can go to, right? There's a lot of spend up guards. There's some good values already. So I think that we could just make the case with Giannis being out. We can make the case with Beal being out and Westbrook draft cheat. Would you agree that maybe we don't want to overreact too much to the Cleveland news?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm just looking up the Cleveland stuff right now.
I mean, Dotson has been great. For what it's worth, I have been playing him, and it's been great. I mean, I'm trying to crank lineups out now, and I had him on the cash charts earlier because I thought he was an interesting value. But I am quite curious to basically how you're weighing it now with all the different values that we have presented to us.
Yeah, so like one of the things that led me to being basically all in on Nikola Jokic and Sabonis and Julius Randle, basically from game one, was not that they performed so well, is because some of the advanced tracking metrics were so high on them. These passes made, passes received, front court touches, all those things. I think you watch the game and you get a sense of it, but you can also look at the data and kind of figure out where are the teams trying to run their offense through, which players. And fortunately, we do have a game, Cleveland's last game, they were in this, I believe, this exact same situation, right? The exact same guys out. So we did get, Sexton was a late scratch, but we got at least one point of data, one game of data for how Cleveland was going to operate. And looking at the kind of the passing and touches numbers, it was a lot of Osman and Dotson. Dotson, so passes made, if you go to NBA.com/stats, Osman led the team, led Cleveland 59. Dotson was second with 58. Third place was Drummond with 45, so significantly behind. Fourth place was Nance with 37. So passes received, Osman and Dotson, again, both at the very top of that list. So there's a lot of these two guys, right? Dotson had 11 potential assists in that game. He got 6 eventual assists. Osman had 9 potential assists. He turned those into 7 actual assists. They were running a lot through Osman and Dotson. So I do like both these guys. And my initial reaction is to play Damian Dotson here. I think he's a pretty good look. I mean, he put up 26.5 fantasy points, 35 minutes in a game. They only scored 94 points, and he shot 1 of 8 from 3. Dotson at 4,300, I think, at this point becomes a really good play, and especially against Milwaukee, where you do want 3-point shooters, right? Milwaukee packs the paint, they drop their defense back, they protect the basket, and they allow you to shoot specifically above the break threes. Last couple of years, they've been basically number 1 or number 2 in that area. I think Dotson is going to fire away from deep, and at this point, he's a guy I'm going to probably lock into most of my lineups.
All right, Draftcheat. So I want to ask you one more question here. Middleton and Drew, are they just like you lock and load them into your lineups? Like I think Middleton is for sure. How about Drew?
I think both. Just with Giannis, this is Giannis's first missed game of the season, I believe, as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
So we don't have data, right? Like if you look it up, you're not going to find a lot of minutes for Drew and Middleton without Giannis on the court, but they just don't have that much outside of those two guys. They kind of traded their depth, right, to upgrade to Drew. So yeah, Middleton and Drew, I think both probably carry the load here. Bobby Portis, I think, becomes a little bit interesting coming off the bench, just because without Giannis, I would anticipate Portis carries a pretty heavy offensive load. So yeah, obviously, you take Giannis off the court, and there's just so many stats to go around: rebounding, assists, ball handling, shooting, of course, that the Bucks become a chief team to target for sure.
All right, Bobby, how do you want to handle this game here? Just with the Cavs side of the ball, talk about Dotson. Obviously, that news is important. You talked a little bit about the Bucks side, so give me your full breakdown here, how you're handling this in tournaments.
Yeah, so trying to figure out which guards from either the Washington or this game are going to be in play. I think I still prefer Ish Smith to Dotson. Could be a bad take, but I think I'd still prefer Ish Smith.
Yeah, just so you know, by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, Ish Smith is not starting, which I didn't expect.
He's not starting.
Jerome Robinson is starting, which isn't surprising. I don't know. Is that surprising to you, Draftcheat?
Yeah, a little bit. Jerome starting at point guard?
No, so it's Real Nuto starting with Jerome, right? And then you got Denny, then you have Rui or Bertans, I forget which one, and then you have Brian at center.
I'd prefer Dotson if in that case, then I think you definitely get off Ish.
I'm definitely on Dotson over both of Neto and Ish Smith. Not that Ish Smith and Neto aren't in play, but Dotson's going to be in my lineups for sure. So choosing between Neto and Ish Smith, I think is still very close, despite the fact that Ish isn't starting. But Dotson is the one I do prefer.
All right, Bobby. So back to you. Talk to me about some of these values here and how you're handling them in this game.
Yeah. So basically, now I think it's just weird in terms of like trying to figure out which plays, like which cards. Like we kind of hit on Dotson. I kind of like the idea of going to Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday with Brook Lopez and playing $3. I think that might be rather differentiated relative to like where everything was previously. I like Brook Lopez, like I said, but the usage rate, like we've seen in the past with Middleton when Giannis was out, is just through the roof. And now Drew gets a bump, but if Trey Burke has shooting guard eligibility, maybe you play Drew at point guard in tournaments and play Brook at center. I think that's kind of how I'm kind of leaning towards my core now.
Yeah, Trey has shooting guard eligibility over on DraftKings, so that's obviously something that's pretty good for him as well. Anyone else? Brook Lopez, is he a guy you want to plug in maybe in the center spot? Bobby,
I really like Brook. I think that he's a really good play off of Drummond. Like we said, he has to deal with Drummond. They don't have the size and length with Giannis to deal with Drummond now. He's also an impediment to Drummond basically hitting value. If Drummond's at like 37%, I'd probably be with the field or a little below the field. I just think that Brook's going to pull Drummond away from the basket. It's going to be more of an issue, but Drummond's usage is obviously going to increase now because you're taking Sexton off the court and Garland's not there. Osman has to be someone who's prioritized as well. I don't mind like getting to a lot of the plays in this game. I think it's going to stay closer. Draftcheat, any thoughts?
No, yeah, I think you're right on that. Yeah, I'm kind of sticking to the Dotson and Osman plays from Cleveland, and then just kind of I don't know. I'm not getting too into the weeds with Milwaukee. I think mostly sticking with the studs.
All right, let's head on over to the next game. We kind of went a little out of order because, the way the games are arranged. We want to talk about some of that news that's important, but let's talk about Charlotte. Let's talk about Atlanta. And again, it's not the most glamorous game on the slate, but there are some guys to look at. I think Devontae Graham is a really interesting option that you can go to. Gordon Hayward's getting a little pricey. I think Washington's interesting in tournaments. And on the opposite side, you can make a case for Trae Young, and they could have a massive ceiling game here. And Clint Capella has a decent price tag. John Collins, too, on FanDuel. He's too cheap over there. DC, talk to me about this game. Is it one you're going overweight or underweight on, and who you got?
Yeah, kind of another tough one. Obviously, kind of the focus has been on the games with all the news, and this game doesn't really feature as much news. So I don't know. So far, at least, almost on a normal slate, this would be one that you would, at least I would kind of tend to heavily target, but as of now, this isn't a focus of mine. Do you see anyone here, Travis, that you are really want to get into your lineups?
I'd say Capella's one I'm intrigued by because I have all these spend down spots I can go to where I might be able to land in the mid tier on a Clint Capella, right? Where it can make sense that he's a guy that you might fall on. And again, Charlotte's terrible in the front court, right? So I think that can make some sense. Devontae Graham, too, is another one of those guys. It's like he's guard eligible, and on FanDuel specifically, he's shooting guard eligible, and he falls in that range with like guys like Buddy Hield. I have him on the cash chart right now. You got who else in that range? You have Dotson, who's a little too. Dante DiVincenzo, who's a little bit cheaper there. But hey, we have all this salary that we can spend. It feels like with all this value, where he can make some sense as a guy that you go to. If he just hits a freaking shot for once, man, he would have a massive ceiling game. So I don't hate those guys. That's kind of where I'm at. I think it's a bad spot for PJ Washington. Unless you think that they run him off the court, that's the problem. Like PJ Washington, they actually like to play at the 5 a bit, but the problem is Clint Capella can get him in foul trouble and eat him up a bit. So if you don't like Clint Capella and you're going to go underweight on him, I would maybe go overweight on PJ Washington because you can get the sense that what they're going to do is they're going to go more small ball, and PJ Washington is going to kill Capella so much by shooting from the outside that it causes them to kind of bench Capella more and go for more John Collins small ball lineups.
Yeah, I can see that. Yep.
Yeah, so that maybe in my script I would make sure to match up some of my PJ Washington with my John Collins if I was kind of building out some lineups.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Bobby, how about you? How are you handling this Hornets and Hawks?
Yeah, I did previously. I kind of liked Trae Young because I thought Devontae Graham was kind of his price was too low, and I thought it was a pretty good run back in the situation. I think Trae Young's also I think he's minus 280 for minus 105 for 30 points. I think that's pretty good. He's going to be pretty low owned. But I like that prop for Trae Young. Minus 118 for over 26.5 for Trae Young, and I think his ownership's around 15%. That's pretty good. And then running it back with Graham, it's just a way to differentiate. I don't think Graham will be at least anywhere near as chalky he was going to be previously with all the snooze that we've got at the guard position. So seeing Graham around 11%, So I don't hate this game. I don't hate stacking this up. Line move, 2 points each way on the total. Maybe I did get a little too in the weeds with that Milwaukee, going to a bunch of those Milwaukee guys. Maybe I should have stayed with my original take, but I definitely like Trae Young, Devontae Graham running it back with playing both those guys. I don't mind spending up on the guard spot if everyone's going to be paying down for guard value. That's pretty unsure at this point, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that for sure.
So, so I don't write up, I do one of the articles here at Run for Sports, and I don't write up fades. Maybe I could start doing that, but one reason I was just completely off of Trae Young in his last game against the Hornets, Trae Young, like many point guards, I think, I don't know the exact number, 40 to 50% of his possessions, I believe, come in the pick and roll as a pick and roll ball handler. And the Hornets have been like ridiculously good against pick and roll ball handlers this year. Now, I don't know how much of that is noise, but at least the data, which, I'm kind of a data-driven player in most sports, and including NBA, it's alarming. So the league average, pick and roll ball handler possessions per game, like the frequency is right around 20%. Charlotte has given up by far the fewest possessions per game and percentage-wise to pick and roll ball handlers at 8.8%. The second lowest is the Pelicans at 11.4. Like, they are just way down there. And they're giving up not only the fewest possessions per game by far, but they've also been the very best team in the league in points per possession given up. They're at 0.62 points per possession given up to pick and roll ball handlers. The next best is again, the Pelicans at 0.73. Like, they've just been impossibly good defending that one action, which Trae Young kind of thrives on. So, and then they shut him down last game. We already got a 1-game sample size where that data kind of proved true. So I'm personally off of Trae Young. I get it. I'm not saying he can't go off, but in general, when I'm in doubt, I'll trust the data, and the data points.
It's a 1-game sample size of data. How are you're going to trust that?
No, against Trae Young it is, but on the season, the Hornets have just been incredible against pick and roll ball handlers. So
on the season, how many games have we played at this point?
9 games.
9 games, yeah.
I mean, you do have to start taking into account at some point. Obviously, I think you're playing Trae. You're just doing it more as like he's a low-owned GPP play and he can go off at any time, right? I think that's kind of the
that's pretty much my thought process. I think that's definitely the way you can kind of attack it. Is like if he's going to be low-owned on the slate, it's just a matter of like differentiating the construction. Everyone's going to be paying down at the guard position. Pay up, find a way to pay up. That would be how I'd pretty much approach it. I think if you're getting them at 15%, you're getting leverage on the field, right? So I don't think it's the worst GPP play. And I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not telling anyone not to play Trae. I'm just relaying the data. It is what it is. I mean, the Hornets have just been just.
Yeah, but it's 9 games of data. That would be.
I mean, but the only thing is, like, I'm in the camp of DC at least. Like we can't. I mean, I love Derek Carty, but we can't wait till like game 1,000, right? You know what I mean? Like when do we start taking the data into account? We got to take into account.
It's only 9 games. But it's the only data we have. Like I don't know.
It's 9 games. It's only 9 games.
Listen, I like this 9 games comment. I'm going to use this against you at some point again, Bobby, and there'll be egg on your face. But for now, let's move on. Let's talk about Dallas a little bit. So we'll go out of order on some of the games because Dallas is kind of a priority to talk about. We have some of these guards that we have to kind of judge against. The Cleveland value. We got to judge it against the Washington value. So let's go a little out of order here. Dallas and Orlando. Draft cheat. I'll go to you first. Luka Doncic, he just seems like he's a lock button play. I want to get all of Luka into my lineups. You got Trey Burke as a really good value play. And the front court, like we need some value in the front court, and there's some decent one there too. How are you handling this Dallas side of the ball?
Yeah, it's kind of off Luka to start the year, but obviously he's kind of shrugged off that slow start to the season and just balling out these last couple of games. So I have no problem with him. He is my preferred spend up by a pretty good margin, frankly, over Trae Young. I know he'll be more popular, but I do feel much more confident in Luka having a big game. Especially with the guys that Dallas is missing, right? Jalen Brunson, Dorian Finney, like they're just a little shorthanded. I think we're going to see Luka perhaps north of 40% usage in this game. Orlando, a better defense, I think, than most people give them credit for, but I still think this is a fantastic spot for Luka. So I'm in on him. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. becomes an interesting play. I anticipate him playing maybe 35 plus minutes. We know he can get hot from three. I think he's a fun GPP play with the guys that Dallas is missing. So yeah, I'm in on Dallas for sure. Mostly leading the way with Luka. I think they'll kind of mix and match. I mean, we saw Boban get some run. I could see them using him against Vucevic, right? That kind of makes sense, right?
Maybe. The problem is Vuce can just pull him out and you can just like pee and arm to death, right? Like, I mean, you would think, or pick and pop. Like, it could just be a disaster.
The guys I don't want to use Boban against are the teams that run because he just can't keep up. I don't mind using him against guys like we saw him play pretty big minutes against Nikola Jokic. I think Vuce, there's no real comp to Nikola Jokic, but I think Vuce is a lot of the way there when you compare him to other centers as kind of a distributor, a guy they run things through. So Boban, if you want to get really weird, I don't mind that. And then on the Orlando side, obviously missing guys, Aaron Gordon returning, that takes Kem Birch out of play for me. But they still are missing, obviously, Fultz, Evan Fournier. We'll see Cole Anthony start again. I think he's okay. But I will go back to Terrence Ross. I was wrong on him yesterday. He had a terrible game, and his price is still high. But I could see him getting hot in this game. So I do like Terrence Ross a little bit, going back to the well there.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge believer in Dallas's defense, so I think that makes sense for a guy like Terrence Ross. And I think you brought up a really great point about Vucevic. He does kind of like have that Jokic kind of role. I mean, it's not identical, right? But it's
pretty close. I mean,
yeah, and he's gonna, like, you could see them run more half court, and what they do is they just say, "Hey, Vuce, like, here's the ball, and let's start the offense from here." And that's what they do with Jokic when they're in half court settings as well.
But Boban can defend that, right? He can defend a kind of a stationary center with the ball. That's where you want him. It's when you guys get guys like, that are kind of running all over the court and popping out on the pick and roll, pick and pop out the three. Those are the guys that Boban can defend. So I'm not saying there's so much value on the slate. It's probably a little bit thin, but we know what Boban can do if he gets 20 minutes, right? At that price and that ownership. So just something to think about if you want to get weird.
Oh, for sure. How about you, Bobby? How are you handling the Dallas side of the ball and the Magic here?
Yeah, I think Draftcheat hit on like two really good plays. I like Vucevic. I think stands out really well in tournaments. Don't mind playing him. Going to the Boban, like if they're down guys, I think he makes sense as a GPV flyer and large field stuff. Trey Burke would be the guy, though, at 3K that I think I'd be more interested in. And obviously, Doncic. Like, Doncic's usage is going to be through the roof. He's going to be a linchpin in all cash games. With all these studs going down, he's going to be the guy that everyone's going to pay up for. So I think Doncic is pretty much a lock. Like, that's not saying much. But maybe Maxi Kleber, power forward on DK, I don't mind at all as well. Yeah. I think he's played well. And yeah, James Johnson, if he plays the 0.4, I think you have him the cash starter did, right, at 3-2. So I think he's also in play.
A lot of guys for Dallas in play, I think.
Yeah, a lot of guys for Dallas.
The slate is tough because there's just so many guys in play with all the it's really one of those slates where with Giannis out, with the two Washington stars out, like in my opinion, you got to be careful. You don't want to roster someone who you're kind of like praying for 20 fantasy points, right? I think you're going to need more than that from every position.
All righty, let's go on and talk about the next game. This one is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the San Antonio Spurs, which it's an interesting game. Obviously, Cat could come back. Wouldn't want to really re-roster on him. The Spurs side of the ball, DeRozan has been phenomenal. Keldon Johnson has been playing pretty good basketball. This seems like one of the not so better games to roster in the slate, but it does have a 235 total, right? It is shocking to see it that high. DC, break it down for me first here. You like the Timberwolves, I believe. I don't know if you're still a fan of them or if you moved on to Denver guys, but talk to me about the Timberwolves here.
Yeah, Timberwolves still near and dear to my heart, unfortunately. I wish I could let them go, but I just can't quite do it yet. Yeah, we'll see with Towns. Kind of seems like he might be back. I'm surprised that he would be able to return from a dislocated wrist in, a couple weeks now, but whatever. I'm not a doctor. he'll be on a minutes restriction if he does play. That's the report, at least. So I would trust that. I wouldn't play Towns, even if he's in there, even as a deep GPP option. I just wouldn't go there. But Towns being in, I think, would kind of take me off of any Timberwolves I might otherwise be on, right? Towns, obviously a high usage guy, is going to do a lot for that team in the, whatever it is, 20 to 30 minutes that he's playing. The one guy I'm looking at from Minnesota, I think here, is Anthony Edwards, obviously the number 1 draft pick. Comes off the bench still, but just given the state of the Timberwolves, and they need to find out what they have in him, right? So he's going to get his 25 minutes off the bench. And if you watch the Wolves play, this guy just shoots it every time down the court. He hasn't shot it well so far, but you're talking about a guy that could get up 20-plus shots for 5K. I mean, and is a good athlete. I know the peripherals haven't been there so far, but I think Edwards basically every time out brings some pretty interesting GPP upside to the slate. I was more interested in him when there wasn't so much great value, right, with all these guys sitting out. But I still think if you need a last guy in your lineup and you got 5K left, Edwards could be a good way to go. The Spurs, yeah, I mean, DeRozan has been awesome. I think this game will go very overlooked in general. Timberwolves are just atrocious defensively. I would expect DeRozan to basically do whatever he wants in this game. So I think he'd be the guy I'd look toward for the most part for San Antonio.
Hey, Bobby, how are you handling this game here? Minnesota, we got the Spurs. It's a high total. And again, like I said, the draft cheat. In tournaments, I think you can make a case to kind of get some exposure to these guys. DeRozan would be an interesting spend-up option. Malik Beasley, I mean, he's a nice ball handler here that you can get exposure to. Wancho, Big T's workbench guy that got the things moving. Is he going to start here and be in an interesting spot? Break it down for me, Bobby. What are you doing with this 235 total?
Yeah, so I think that cat news is really important, right? JSU hit on Vandy the other night for 100K. Like, I don't mind, like, Vandy, Wancho, these guys all come into play. Like, Vandy's obviously seen blow around, but he's played well.
Vandy averages like a huge fantasy point per minute. So if he gets minutes, Vandy is going to produce.
Vandy's one of the guys, like, I think you have to, like, backload for. Like, this cat news is actually more important than I think a lot of people are overlooking. That's why I don't like people just jumping on all this Washington value. Draftcheat made a good point. Like, if that game blows out and you're on all those guys, then you're pretty much dusted. Yeah, I don't mind waiting to kind of get this cat news, sift through it. I don't mind D-Russ. Like, neither of these teams play defense. The total's 235. The spreads came down to 4.5. Like, this could be a tight game and a game that goes overlooked. Like, I don't mind hitting this game if possible. Don't mind DeJounte Murray. Like I said, differentiating the construction at point guard, I think it makes sense. Yeah, that's pretty much it. D'Angelo Russell. Like the guys that we would go to. All these Timberwolves games have pretty much blown out. But now it's a tighter spread. And maybe Vandy does get more run. He's played well. So, I don't know. Interesting to see their starters. I don't mind Juan Honcho either.
I was on Vanderbilt. His last game obviously came through in a big way. I would be very hesitant to play him if Towns plays. I think Vanderbilt could potentially not get on the court at all if that's the case.
Yeah, we got Triska in the chat saying you guys didn't get through the games. Guys, we're going to be on here for a while. You know why? We're going to be talking, more about these games, any of the late news that breaks, and we're going to be talking some Showdown, right? We're going to talk the NFL game that's coming up here at 8:15. And listen, we already talked about the games that are like the most important, right? Like, I mean, I don't know, this late game, you want to get some exposure to it, but there is risk to it. And the game we talked about, again, it's got a great total, but there are guys that you're not just loading up on, right? You're not game stacking this game up, right? Draftcheat, this Timberwolves Spurs game.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I know it's a high total, but I wouldn't go there.
Yeah, exactly. It is odd, though, to see again. People are surprised that Spurs have high totals, but they run and gun a lot more. It's been a fun team to watch.
Don't avoid the Spurs. Don't avoid Spurs games. That's for sure.
Yeah, I know people have that like idea, right, from like the past and like 2016 and stuff, but definitely great games to target at times. I mean, Malik Beasley, the usage that he's seeing has been great. Curious to see what happens with Towns, so that's going to be news that could change some stuff up. I disagree with Bobby saying that like the Vanderbilt news is important. The reason why I say that is I guess maybe in tournaments it can be important, but I personally think that this news that we got was so good that we just don't want to pass on it. It's not worth waiting, where I think if you backload, you're in trouble. Do you agree with that, Bobby?
No, so like if you're that bullish on the Washington news, I'm just saying in GPPs, like late swap equity we've seen and kind of hit pretty much regularly this season. So Towns would be another guy, and that's a big usage hole you're taking away from this T-Wolves team. someone has to deal with Aldridge. Aldridge was on fire. Aldridge is pretty good FanDuel play. I think he's around 6,400 in tournaments. I wouldn't mind pivoting to him if you're trying to get different in GPPs. And yeah, the spread's tightening. I don't know why you guys would overlook it in tournaments. 235 total. I just feel like it'd be more. You take Towns out, maybe it might have a chance of blowing out more, but I don't know.
All right, well, listen, let's move on to the next game from here and talk about that. We got the Trailblazers, we got the Kings, and this is another game, like high total, interesting one to get some exposure to. The Kings, I'm not scared of that defense that they have there. I'm not scared of the Portland defense either. I mean, there's going to be a lot of shots chucked up. This is going to be a fast-paced game. Draftcheat, is it Dollar Dame time? Is it CJ McCollum, Nurkic? He's going to have to match up a ton with some of these guys. On the opposite side, like Buddy Hield, Halliburton, Fox. Are there too many Kings basically right now where it's going to cause too many usage problems where you don't know which one's to target? How do you want to break this whole game down?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping Fox just selfishly was going to miss some time because I wanted to lock in
Halliburton,
just again and again until he went from, I think it was 5,400 yesterday. I played him hoping Fox would sit, and then I didn't really have any great pivots, so I ended up just holding him in there. Yeah, I think he went off for 40 fantasy points. This dude is legit. Like I think he would be like an 8 or 9K. I think he might actually be better than De'Aaron Fox right now. I think he'd be an 8 or 9K player if Fox was out. Obviously, Fox very likely to play in this game. I still think you can play Halliburton at 5,800. He's that good. I think he's going to continue to ball out for the Kings. So
I think I saw someone say on Twitter he might be just as good as Luka. I mean, that's a little absurd, right? Like the kid's good, but come on, he's not that good, correct?
I don't think he's quite that good, but man, I don't want to put a cap or ceiling on Halliburton. I've been just super impressed from what I've seen in the data on him. So I don't mind him at 5,800. I think you can go to Dame. For me, Dame is a player that I kind of target specifically against teams that are really bad against pick and roll ball handlers. I was all over him. I haven't been on him much this season, frankly, but I was all over him against the Timberwolves, who are the worst pick and roll ball handler defense in the entire league. The Kings are decent, right? They're okay against pick and roll ball handlers. So just given the value that we have, given that we got Luka and this Bucks value, I don't see getting to Dame tonight. Frankly, I've missed the boat on CJ McCollum. I haven't played him at all this year, really, and he's been phenomenal. So maybe you would go in that direction, but it's just hard for me to click on that price point for CJ McCollum. So I'm not on this game a ton, to be honest, especially now with all the value that we've got throughout the slate.
Yeah, I think maybe not the only way I'd play Dame, but the way I would play Dame is if I was stacking up these Kings, right? If I'm playing a Buddy Hield, if I'm playing a Halliburton, if I'm putting in a Rashawn Holmes, which these guys, again, they're getting a little pricier, then I would run it back with Dame because I always feel like the way Dame plays is he's okay to just like sit back and relax. But when the game is close and, pressure's on and he has to take over, he will take over. But he's okay to take a backseat more than I think people realize. When he's hot and he's rolling on those massive streaks, yeah, he keeps shooting every single night because he's feeling himself, right? But he's okay to take a backseat to McCollum more than I think people realize. Bobby, I'll go to you. How do you think about that thought on that game? Do you think I'm correct? Do you think you should play Dame with Kings ran back? Do you think you can play him on an island by himself? And how are you handling the rest of these guys in this game?
Yeah, like Dame, like the call on Dame a lot. Especially Dame just had the big game. When Dame starts getting hot, you want to get on that train. JT had the call the other night. Don't mind going back to Dame here. I think guys for the Kings, Buddy Hield has just been very difficult to pinpoint all year, so he'd probably be out of play for me. DC hit it on Halliburton. Halliburton's a stud, absolute stud. Wish Buddy Hield would kind of move aside and maybe Halliburton could see some of those minutes, but maybe that'll kind of transform as the season progresses. But I don't know. I would prefer. I like going to Holmes and maybe Dame as a run back. Those would be my two favorite plays in this Portland Kings game.
All right, we got some news, by the way. We got Cole Anthony is starting with Bacon, Ennis, Gordon, and Vucevic. So that is the starting lineup there for the Magic. Obviously, that might hurt Cole Anthony a little bit, having Aaron Gordon back there. DC, any final thoughts here on this game, or do you want to move on and talk about some football here?
We didn't really talk about Aaron Gordon, but I think he could be potentially interesting here coming off that rested game. It seems like his minutes cap is maybe mostly gone. So, yeah, that'd be the only thing. I'm not on Cole Anthony in this one, back-to-back. He's said he's tired. Now we got Aaron Gordon back. So I'm sticking with Terrence Ross and then maybe some Aaron Gordon in that game.
All right, and if you guys want here, throw some questions in the chat. We're happy to answer some questions, whether it's football, whether it is basketball related. Before we do that, DC, give me like one of like your top plays. I don't know if you did your article today or you typically do it during the week, but give me one of your top plays of the day today.
Damian Dotson is the guy I'm rolling with. He'll be in every game that I make. Looking at the data, looking at his price point, looking at the specific matchup against the Bucks, who allow a ton of 3-point attempts. Dotson 4,300 for the Cavaliers, the guy that I'm locking in there.
All right, Bobby, how about you? Give me one play that you got a lot of interest in tournaments that you're going to kind of be overweight on that other people might not be.
Right now, just kind of sifting through it. I'm going to go with Trae Young. I know DC's on the pick and roll defense, but I'm going to go with Trae, running it back with Devontae.
All right, I'm going to go with Mr. Osman, man, Jedi. I think he's a really interesting option. I have him as a core play over here at Run Pure Sports. If you guys haven't checked out the content over here, we have tons of great NBA content going on. So head on over there, sign up, use the code Workbench21. You get 25% off your first payment. Osman's going to be one of my core plays over on FanDuel. Like him a lot. I love all the stuff that DC brought up with looking at all the stats. I like looking at some of those things and kind of judging it into, watching the film and kind of breaking it all down. So I like Osman here. I think that makes a ton of sense, and that's going to be my guy that I got here. So let's go to some questions here that we got in the chat. We got one from Abrasive. I'll go to you, Bobby. Aaron Gordon or Osman or Brolo and Gordon Hayward DKGPP?
Aaron Gordon and Osman.
All right, Draftcheat, I'll go to you. Any love for Lamarcus Aldridge on DraftKings? We talked about the Spurs a little bit. I don't think we talked too much about Aldridge, but is he an interesting option?
No.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm kind of tempering my expectations now on Aldridge. I think he made sense earlier in the day. Again, Timberwolves are terrible defensively. You know that, Draftcheat, right? And when we didn't have all this value, it could make some sense to plug him in maybe, but now I think it's not needed. I
agree. I just don't think he's as much upside, really.
All right, we got some ownership coming in too. We got Neto is 25%, Robinson 8%, and Trae Young is 8%. Bobby, Trae Young 8%. Do you like that ownership, or do you think?
I like that ownership. It's funny. I just put Lamarcus Aldridge as one of my FanDuel core plays. I like that game. So.
Yeah, I mean, I get the reason I like the game because obviously Minnesota is really terrible. But I'm with Draftcheat. I don't think you need Aldridge, but it is a little different. Draftcheat, would you say you can maybe get away with Aldridge on a FanDuel because you have to play two power forwards? I don't think that's the case. I wouldn't do it, but what do you think there?
I think it makes more sense on FanDuel. What's his ceiling? I think.
It's rough because DeRozan has been so good this season, right? Like DeRozan's role has been awesome. He's a guy I've been playing a little bit at the start of the year, and now the price has gone up. I've jumped off him a little bit, but that's my concern as well.
I think Aldridge makes way more sense as a cash game type play. I think he will produce some, but I mean, how often is he going 40 plus fantasy points here? I think
he did it versus the Lakers.
Yeah,
nights ago.
He certainly could. I just don't see it myself. So yeah.
The one problem I have too with it is like, listen, like cash games are harder now. Like I hate taking these like dusty dudes that are just gonna like find their way to get to like 25 or 30. Like right, like I want a dude that's like a bullet that can just get me there. Where like at the end of the night, I'm looking at that guy and I'm like first of all, Aldridge is gonna be low owned, right? So I want my low owned guy to like probably have a ceiling where he can kind of like win me that 3v3 and 2v2, sure. And that would be a concern too. That's like one thing I've looked at a lot more in cash games personally. Hayward is 12%. Someone put in the chat. That's Steve Anthony there. He's always hanging out with us. Tony has a question for us. What do you guys think of Willie Cauley-Stein in cash? I think he's in play, but with some of the values that we got at guards, I don't think we need to go there. I'll go to you, Bobby. What do you think of Willie Cauley-Stein?
Yeah, I think he's fine. Like you said, like with the value that we got, I think there's other directions that you can go in cash games.
DC, do you agree with Willie Cauley-Stein?
I just don't really see his role changing all that much, right? They never play him and Powell on the court at the same time. So Powell's obviously in there. I know Dallas is down guys, but I don't really see them rolling out both Powell and Cauley-Stein on the court at the same time. So despite the Dallas injuries and they're shorthanded, I still think I can't really project Cauley-Stein for any more than, 22, 24 minutes, which is kind of what he's been getting. So he's a fine play, but I just don't think he really, if you wouldn't have been on him with the Dallas, with their full roster, I don't really see why you would be on him now, basically.
All right, let's talk about Okoro, DC, because you looked at some of the Cavs stuff. That's why I want to ask you about this guy. So someone's asking, is he okay on DK? Would you get some Okoro exposure here in the spot?
You could, but just from the data that I'm looking at and how Cleveland played their last game, I think Dotson and Cedi Osman are both fantastic plays, and I'm mostly off of the Cavaliers other than those two.
All right, Bobby, we'll do one more question here. Is tonight the night Nurkic drops 50 DK points? We've been waiting for that for a while. I don't know. Is tonight the night, Bobby?
Yeah, I guess Nurkic has been dealing with some issues back home. For what it's worth, I like Nurkic, waiting for him to come around. Hope it all works out. I don't know if tonight's the night, but if everyone's going to play Drummond and that total's where it's at, I don't mind pivoting in GPPs. I think you definitely take a GPP flyer on him. I'm not as bullish on Drummond as everyone else, I guess, but it is what it is.
All right, let's talk some NFL Showdown. If you guys want to hang out for that, we're happy to have you here and talk about it. We got the playbook is already up. It's up and live. So head on over to Run Pure Sports. Check that out. Also, please hit that like, hit that subscribe. You know I need to do that because got to subscribe to the channel so you get notified tomorrow morning when we go live for the Wood Show. I don't know, DC, are you on that tomorrow? Is it you, Hoop, and Big T doing that thing for Sunday football?
Yeah, me, Hoop, Big T on there, I believe at 10 Eastern time. Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, you stole my job, Draftcheat. So,
no, Wally Pitt. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm
sure happy sleeping on Sunday morning.
No, I'm not. I'm not sleeping in, man. I am up looking at all of the news, and it's been good actually. It's been I found some gems actually. If I was on the show with you guys, I wouldn't have gotten some big Tony Pollard bets in that won me a lot. So
there we go.
Happy to have you there, Draftcheat. You helped me, put some money into my wallet. So there you go. But let's talk some football here. I'm excited to talk about this game, as excited as I can be because it's a rough game. But I do think it's easy to kind of predict what's going to happen, and I don't mind those slates because then we can really use some game theory to figure out how to get different. Like people don't want to, I don't know if we're in that state of DFS where people are still just wanting to fill out their full salary, right? I'm okay with not doing that. I can leave $2,000 on the table. I can leave $3,000. I'm okay with that. I think Tom Brady is obviously an option that you can go to, but I think Ronald Jones and I think Antonio Brown are my two favorite captain plays of the entire slate. Those are the guys that I'm looking at the most. I think Ronald Jones is going to get used a ton, and I think Antonio Brown is really going to slide into a nice role. I think that Mike Evans is being used more as a decoy, and if you look, early in the week, I thought Chris Godwin was going to be a great play. I said that these short yardage plays make a ton of sense for a guy like Chris Godwin. My fear is if you look at Washington, they've been really great against the slot throughout this season. You kind of dive into some of these matchups a ton, Draftcheat. So am I crazy to maybe get off of Godwin? Because I personally think that at first, Brady made sense just to throw those quick A-dot throws to Godwin. But the more I looked into the matchups, I got worried. And I think it's going to be a big Antonio Brown game for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. We don't know exactly what role Mike Evans is going to play, right? It looks like he's going to be active in this game. Hyperextended his knee, I believe, is the official injury in their Week 17 game. Looked pretty ugly. I'm kind of surprised that he's able to recover from that. Again, I don't know, I could see anything from Evans being just good to go to not playing many snaps or being used as a decoy. I think there's a wide range of outcomes on Mike Evans. I mentioned that I'm not going to play Mike Evans here. I think he'll be low owned, but I'm still not going to do it myself unless news comes out, in the next hour that he's feels fine or whatever. So I do like the Antonio Brown call. I think he is probably the play for me over Godwin. I think both guys are fine. Gronkowski, I think, makes a fun play. Obviously we're talking Showdown, so you can go, two tight ends. I do like Logan Thomas too. But yeah, I think this is going to be a Ronald Jones game. That's what I think. The Washington football team, I want to call them the Redskins. they have one of the best pass defenses in the entire league. This game is in Washington. It's in the cold. I don't see Washington being able to move the ball here. So I like the Tampa Bay defense to control this game, and I don't think that the Bucs are going to want to drop Tom Brady back into, risky situations against a ferocious Washington front seven time and time again if they don't have to, and I don't think they're going to have to. So I think you're going to see 20-plus carries from Ronald Jones. I think he'll get in the box. I think he's got a good chance at 100-plus yards. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. That's just the way, if you look at Tom Brady, yes, he has and is still capable of airing it out and having big pass games when he needs to. We've seen it so many years with the Patriots, right? Where if the Patriots are controlling a game with their defense and their running game, Tom Brady will hand it off 20 times in a row to end the game. And that's what I think we're going to see here. So that's the angle I'm taking. Ronald Jones, captain spot. Bucs defense is going to be in there. And I think this is going to be kind of a low-scoring Ronald Jones-led slugfest.
All right, Bobby, how about you? What's your kind of breakdown here on the captains? Like I said, I like Ronald Jones. I like Antonio Brown. You like to get a little different. Maybe I'm on the chalk and I'm a donkey, but what do you think here? No,
I think you guys are on Jones. I'm on Jones. Like DC pretty much hit on. You take out Alex Smith. This spread pretty much favors the Bucs. Brady for years just basically pounding the rock when he had. If he doesn't have to throw, he won't throw.
Exactly.
So, in that situation, it's pretty much Ronald Jones, the correlation with the defense. It just becomes in GPPs, the defense is going to be extremely chalky, 20%. You know what I mean? In that scenario, what can you do to strategize around getting leverage off this defense? Washington is at home. Obviously, home in COVID era isn't as significant as it might be previously, but I don't know. It's maybe. It's just difficult trying to decide what you want to do with the Bucs D as a 20% defense, $4,800. I just don't.
Yeah, you can leave a lot of money on the table on the Showdown slate. I mean,
definitely.
I just made a lineup. I got Ronald Jones in there as captain. Taylor Heineke is going to start this game. Alex Smith is inactive. I think Heineke's frankly a pretty good play at 6K. He can run the ball a little bit. I think he's going to have to, right? Washington very, very likely to fall behind in this game. He's going to have to do some stuff.
DC, I want to mention one thing about Heineke. He's 5K on FanDuel, right? That's
I'm in on that. I think Washington's going to struggle, but I think Heineke could easily run for 50 yards in this game. I think he'll get there. McKissick, I think, is interesting. I just made basically what is kind of my favorite DraftKings Showdown lineup, and I have $7,200 left on the table, which is just absurd, right? I'm a proponent of leaving money on the table on Showdown slates. I don't know if I've ever left 7K plus before, so I really think this is one of those games where you can get pretty weird if you want to.
Yeah, he's got a cheap price tag. Bobby, you were going to say something. What were you going to say?
Yeah, any Godwin love, you figure with this Washington pass rush, Brady obviously likes to work between the hashes. Godwin's going to see a lot of. I know everyone's kind of going to be in the running game, but maybe going to Godwin. Godwin's not going to be low owned, obviously, but
I worry about Godwin because not that I worry about him, but my fear is they've been really good against the slot, right? And of course, if Brady wants to force feed Godwin, he can obviously do well. And Evans obviously can be a decoy there and cause some problems. But I'll probably have some Godwin exposure, but I want more Antonio Brown than Godwin personally. That's kind of where I'm at on the slate.
I'm there too, but who knows between Antonio Brown and Godwin, right? I just think
their props are extremely similar.
Of course, because it's one bubble screen, right? It's one bubble screen, at the 3-yard line. He can easily score, and it's not a problem. And he's such a good PPR beast.
I just think with the pass rush, the ADOT for Godwin, these Brown and Mike Evans routes are more downfield, where Godwin would be working the Edelman routes in retrospect. So that's why I'd probably prioritize him over Brown, him and Gronkowski, I would imagine. But Brown and I feel like Brown's Brady and Brown have that narrative. They're just obviously maybe he feeds Brown. Obviously Brown's great talent and they have that, they're living together. Right. So It's pretty much.
Yes, the shower narrative is live for Antonio Brown and Tom Brady. So I don't know. Do we have enough data on Tom Brady and shower narratives, DC? Are there enough of those out there for us?
Look at Edelman, dude. What are you talking?
What's your sample size? Is it 9 games? What's your?
Do we have video or pictures of Tom Brady?
We have 9 years with Edelman, right?
How many showers? Did they take 9 showers together? Did they take 9 years worth of showers? What's going on here, Bobby? Do you have the intel on this for us?
Well, they've obviously been showering a lot now. They've been living together for like 4 months, 5 months. So
is that enough data? Is 4 or 5 months enough sample size for us?
They might be. Giselle might be showering. Who knows? You never know. So they're all showering together.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. Listen, the Bucks are going to shower all over the Washington side. It's going to be a disaster for.
It's going to be
Washington.
It's going to be rough for the Skins.
Now, DC. So here's a question on the Washington. Who are you playing as a skill player? Right? Are you playing McLaurin? Like I didn't like McLaurin with Alex Smith. I'll admit I don't know if I can play him with Heineke. Is McKissick a better play? The reason why I like McKissick in the past with Smith is because of the checkdowns, right? And it's a PPR site, and Washington's not going to score many touchdowns anyway, so just get all those PPR points, right? I'll get a touchdown with 6 catches through McKissick. Is this a spot where you can do that? Is Logan Thomas going to keep doing as well as he's been doing? Obviously, with it being a game where it's the playoffs, right? They're going to bring out all their bag of tricks, right? Is Logan Thomas maybe going to throw a ball to McLaurin? What do you think of kind of that?
I mean, it's hard to know. We've seen Heineke for 1 game in Week 16. In those 2 games, he did heavily target both McKissick and Logan Thomas. It would be way presumptive to say that's going to happen again, and that's what Heineke wants to do because it's not even a full game sample size. But that's all we have. So I do like both McKissick and Thomas. They are my preferred options. McLaurin is a fade for me. It doesn't seem like he's 100% healthy. A tough matchup, and from what I know of Heineke, he's not really one to shred a defense down the field, right? I think he's going to be trying to move the ball the best he can. That seems like a lot of McKissick and Thomas to me. So I don't think that's some hot take or anything, but when I'm making my showdown lineups, I'll take 6,600 Logan Thomas over 8,800 Terry McLaurin, even with $7,000 to spare, right? I would take Logan Thomas straight up over McLaurin, just raw fantasy points in this matchup. So that's the way I'm going. Leaves more money on the table, makes you a little bit more unique. I don't have a ton of confidence in that take, to be honest, but you got to take a stand somewhere. That's the one I'm taking.
Yeah, Bobby, how about you? How are you handling these Washington position players?
I think you're muted, Bobby.
Yeah, I just figured out how to use the mute button. So I think that I had to figure that out because I kept clicking my mouse. Yeah, basically I liked McLaurin prior when it was a tentative play, but I liked McLaurin based on just a strategy game theory play on the main slate with Alex Smith. Because obviously they haven't had the success. And DC made a good point. McLaurin seems like he's been hurt, but it just seemed like a way to kind of differentiate myself. Now with whatever his name is starting, I have no interest in McLaurin and would definitely look to Logan Thomas. Yeah, that'd be pretty much it. How about you, Mangone?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's McKissick and Thomas, but we haven't talked about this guy yet. I want to party with Gronk, man. I think Gronk is a really good play to go to, and I made a team right now that was really good, $200 left, and I was like, okay, it has Logan Thomas. I might just plug Gronk in. Let me look at his price. I was curious what it is, and I can get him for 5.8, so I can now leave $1,000 on the table, and I'm okay with leaving more, but I still think this team is really strong that I made, and I like it a lot. So. Yeah, I think Gronk is a really good option that you can go to as well. I mean, he's got a tough price tag, right? 5.8 is a decent price there. DC, I want to go back to you. Who are the cheap guys we can talk about? Can we go to Uncle Lenny, Leonard Fournette? Is he going to be in play? Can we go down to one of the kickers? I mean, this could be a day where Ryan Suckup could make some sense. Obviously, if there's not a lot of points being scored on the Washington side of the ball, you got to play 6 guys, right? And he could obviously get to 12 fantasy points, and he could count as an option. You can look at Cam Brate as a cheap tight end guy that you can go to there. That could be leverage off of Gronk. Even Scotty Miller. Let's say Mike Evans is not in the best shape, and he gets midway through the game, he just kind of bows out. Scotty Miller is going to be in that role. They basically said Mike Evans will, his role will be consumed by a Godwin and a Scotty Miller. So how do you want to handle these cheaper options on the Bucs side and Redskins?
Yeah, I think Miller makes a lot of sense. Just kind of gambling on Mike Evans not doing much, and Miller takes that role. But, as I've kind of previously stated, I just think this is going to be a Bucs blowout. And I want to captain Ronald Jones. He's kind of my big play in this game. And if I do that, you can't even really spend the money, right? So I'm not going to these super cheap guys because I don't really need to leave more than like $5,000 on the table. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not on the super punt plays in this game. I just don't think you have to go there. I get it. But normally I don't really play those guys unless there are some studs that I feel that I actually absolutely need. It's just not the case here. Ronald Jones is pretty cheap himself, and he's the guy when I'm in my captain spot that opens up everything. So I'm not going there myself. I think Scotty Miller and Cameron Brate would be the guys if you want to get super weird that you could go to, but probably not going to make my rosters.
All right, Bobby, how about you? Who are some of the cheaper guys you can plug into your lineups here that we can talk about? Bobby, are you on mute again?
Really like Miller. You guys hit on Miller. I think he's a really good play, especially at his price tag. Don't hate Steve Sims at 1,800. I don't want to play him, but he doesn't seem like the worst play. Cameron Brate at 2,700 is another guy, especially in those short area passing for Brady. I think he makes sense. Not really much outside of that. JD, did you hit on Well, McKissick's kind of priced up.
We talked about because.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. Maybe Cam Sims. Cam Sims at 6,600. So it'd probably be Scotty Miller or Cameron Brate for me.
All right, DC, could a Cam Sims intrigue you? Do you know? I'll admit I have not watched a lot of Taylor Heineke film on the Washington football team. It sounded like you've seen at least a little more than me. Any interest in the Sims options? Are these guys? Do they have a nice rapport with him? I don't really know. So curious if you have a good.
That's what my thought. They may have been on the well. Yeah, I don't know. Cam Sims, he's been playing more now, so.
I'm not going to claim to be some Taylor Heineke expert, but from what I've seen and what I know about him, he's more of an athlete quarterback. I think he could pick up a lot of yards I think if Heineke has a good game, I think it's going to be a lot through his legs. So again, that's kind of why I'm on these kind of dump off guys, Thomas, McKissick.
So it wouldn't be Cam Sims. I didn't. Yeah.
I'll be surprised if Heineke is throwing downfield a lot in this game. I know they might be down and he might have to. I think he'll struggle in that situation. That's kind of why I'm on the Bucs defense here, because I think if Heineke is forced to kind of operate as your traditional downfield thrower, I think he's really going to struggle. That's my read on it.
All right. I guess, one last question, unless you guys have anything else that I got. Can you captain the defense, right? Is it captain Bucs defense season? Is this the week? Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea. It is pricey, but I don't know. Pricing doesn't seem like it maybe matters too much. How about you, Bobby? What would you do with that Bucs defense today?
Yeah, you can captain them. We're talking chalk defense. Obviously it's a smash play, but I'm just saying, if a defense is going to be this highly owned, DC is saying Heineke has rushing equity. I don't know, it's just in tournaments, I don't want to pay a 20% owned defense in Showdown. I just don't. I get why it's such a great play. It's a really highly owned. Just trying to think about ways to get different outside of just playing the defense. But yeah, you can definitely play them in the captain. Just want to. What's anyone know? Pull up their ownership for the captain slot, probably high as well, also, right? Or a little less, obviously.
Here's my thing. There's the Redskins hated Dwayne Haskins from the beginning of the year, and they went back to him multiple times and went to Alex Smith, who had 130 leg surgeries instead of Heineke for a reason, right? Heineke can't. No, I get it. So, and the Bucs defense is coming to play here. They're on a mission to win the Super Bowl. to me, this is a Ronald Jones and a Bucks defense game. I think you could see a 35-3 type score here. Wouldn't shock me whatsoever. So that's my take on it. Again, Vegas says differently. They project the Redskins for 19 points. If the Redskins score 19 points, you're going to want some pieces of that offense, right? It's got to come from somewhere.
I think you're making a really good case though, like against not fading the defense. Like they went out of their way not to play Heineke.
I mean, that's just where I'm at.
The entirety of the season. Like, why would you know what I mean? So,
like, if you look at my teams tonight, you're going to see really defense on all of them. You just will. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we got a couple things of news. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll try and touch on them. I do want to mention Thomas Bryant. He got hurt, so if he basically helped.
Towns is active too.
Yeah, that's the other piece of news. Towns is active. So if you have Bryant in your lineup, like definitely look to make some pivots. Obviously, if you're on some chalk, you need to try and make some crazy pivots to kind of catch up because he's going to.
Or just throw your laptop out the window, one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea, too. Probably just move on to Showdown and not even worry about it too much. But, yeah, the 0 is going to be tough to overcome. Let's talk about the Towns news, and then we'll kind of get on out of here unless we get any other news that breaks. The Towns news doesn't do too much for me, right? I don't know, Draftcheat, I'll go to you first. Do you want to jam into your lineups? Do you want to get off some guys? How are you handling this?
No Towns for me. I think we're going to see, I would guess, fewer than 30 minutes. He's not really priced down very much. Again, if you have Thomas Bryant, maybe I guess you could try that and hope for a miracle, but I'm not there. It does take me off of pretty much the entire Wolves roster outside of maybe Anthony Edwards, who I think is going to get his shots up in minutes regardless, but really reduces my interest overall in the Wolves. And outside of some weird scenario, I wouldn't be playing Towns myself.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Bobby, you like the Timberwolves a little bit better, so what are you thinking here on Towns?
I love this game now for GPPs, right? We're hoping Towns keeps it close, lines and moving towards this game finally not blowing out for Minnesota. We're going to get some low-owned plays. You guys hit on DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray. These guys are going overlooked. They're not going to be totally owned, so I don't mind hitting this game. Neither of these teams play defense, and Lamarcus Aldridge is now a good play with Towns' defense, so I think you can go that way. And I have him on my FD core, so we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. We got another piece of news that just came across too. Nothing crazy, but I'll get your guys' takes on it. Holiday, DiVincenzo, Middleton, Portis, Lopez. That's the starting lineup. Is that what you expected, Draftcheat? What are you thinking here?
Is it Holiday, Middleton, Lopez, DiVincenzo, and who's the last guy?
It's Holiday, DiVincenzo, Middleton, Portis, and Lopez. So they're going with those double bigs and Portis and Lopez.
Portis is the surprise there, right? I wouldn't have. He's basically played all the center minutes. I
think we have to get some Bobby Portis.
Yeah. I'm in on Portis here.
I'm with you. We get some Portis in our lives.
In on Portis, absolutely.
In on Portis.
Yeah, I mean that's. I have an interesting 2v2 that I could look at that includes Portis. So I don't know. I'll have to look and see if that's an interesting option.
I have Portis.
I want to play Portis at this point. Yes.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Obviously, I think my two
more than interesting. He's starting. Let's go.
I know. I think my 2v2 is like especially with the news that came with Cat. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to look at it. Like it's like. I had Malik Beasley, but I could obviously switch to Buddy Hield, and then I had James Johnson. But I can change out to Portis and Dotson. I think that's a 2v2 that works on FanDuel, I believe. But that's an interesting one that I have to look at now. Obviously, Bobby Portis, the stocks will be good. He could feast a ton here in this spot, so I like that. Bobby, let me get your thoughts on that. You obviously said Bobby Portis is an interesting option. Any other takeaways from seeing that news?
Yeah, you pretty much hit it. I think Portis is just a good play in general. Is Brook starting? Was he in the starting lineup there?
Yeah, he's in the starting lineup. They're playing the double big lineup, which is a little. I don't know. I didn't know who else they would start with them, but I am surprised to see both those guys together.
I'm very surprised, but I'm in on Portis. Listen, the Bucks, their coaching staff knows what they're doing. They're starting Portis for a reason. They think he can perform in this matchup. I assume it kind of makes sense, right? Larry Nance is kind of a pseudo big, as is Bobby Portis, right? They're both kind of a tweener 4 or 5, so. I assume they just think Portis can handle Nance, who doesn't really, stretch the floor that much anyway, kind of like Portis himself. So yeah, I'm in on Portis here, no doubt about it.
Well, let's not give the Bucks too much credit, DC. They don't know how to play Giannis 36 minutes. They're still working on that one. Once they get that figured out,
some more minutes this year. He's been out there a little bit.
Finally, it took too long. Yeah. It took like 3 years, but it is going to be
fun. Basketball, like Big T says. So what do you
I'm in that camp. So what camp are you on? I mean, you troll on Twitter, so I never know. But what side are you? Are you team Giannis? I mean, I get it. He's talented, but I do think he needs to start figuring out how to shoot for sure. I'm a kind of Big T side.
I'm on the side that the back-to-back MVP is good at basketball.
All right. How about you, Bobby? Are you on the back-to-back MVP is good at basketball?
He can't shoot.
There we go.
He can't shoot. He can't shoot. He's great. He's a freak of nature, great athlete, but he can't shoot in a league where you need to be able to shoot. So I'm with T. Like you can't shoot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm with him, but hey, like I still like to play him in fantasy, right? Like I still like money. Like I don't hate money, so I won't fade him when he's in amazing spots. And yeah, they're obviously gonna be a fun team to watch, and I can't wait to see the Bucks probably play the Nets in the Eastern Conference Final. That'll be a really fun thing to watch. DC, give me your final takeaways, your final thoughts on this slate, and then we'll get on out of here.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, NBA obviously. I think the Bucks are the other way to go. Their value, and then Dotson I think is a fantastic play. NFL, I'm on a Bucks just slaughter here. I think it's going to be a lot of Ronald Jones. I think it's going to be a lot of Bucks defense. That's what I'm riding with.
Yeah, I'll close it out with this. Jay Reed asked in the chat. He said Logan Thomas or Gronk in the Classic. If you want to wear a condom, you play Logan Thomas for those PPR points. If you want to go crazy and take it off, you go for Gronkowski. He will be going crazy. But that'll wrap it up for us, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us here. For me, Mangone, DC, and Bobby, we're out of here.